Hi, and welcome to Gigging Out, a podcast about the people and businesses leading the gig economy. I'm Dana Gagnon, CMO at Every, and in this episode, I speak with David Krieger of Onder, an on-demand home maintenance service. After spending a decade in product and strategy at Expedia, David started Onder after buying an older house in Seattle and realizing how overwhelming it could be to maintain things. Other home services marketplaces fell short of his need, so he set out to productize the home manager experience. My favorite part of our discussion is how David shares their product discovery process in the early days, testing multiple different business ideas, learning from what wasn't working, and how they pivoted based on user feedback. We also talk about establishing and iterating on a pricing model, how they attract service providers and customers, and so much more. David had so many great takeaways. I know you'll love this episode. David, thank you so much for being here today on Gigging Out. I'm thrilled to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. I really appreciate the invitation. Looking forward to sharing all about Onder.
Yeah, before we dive into Onder, I would love to learn a little more about David. Can you talk me through your background? What led you to starting your own company?
Yeah, so for starters, I'm out in the Pacific Northwest in Seattle. I've been out here for about 15 years, but originally from the East Coast. I'm a New Yorker that moved out west, got soggy bones, and loves the mountains and the water. So prior to founding Onder, I actually spent 10 years at Expedia out here in Seattle, leading product strategy, business development, a little bit of cup of tea in finance. So I really spent kind of hats across multiple different disciplines, learning about marketplaces, consumer tech, and experiences, primarily in the online travel space. But as I'll share a little bit more about the Onder origin story, it's all transferable. In 2015, started going through life stage changes, had my first child, was living in a small condo with no doors at the time with my wife and two cats, excuse me. And we did that, time to move into a house with doors and more space for everyone. And we bought a house, a 1920 something old house in Seattle. And I grew up in New York in a condo. I had never lived in a house before, and I grew up in the 80s with a Nintendo, and never really learned how to wield tools and fix things. But I figured, all right, I have a kid now, I've got two cats, and I've got this big house. It's time to become an adult. So I went to Ace Hardware and I spent about $500 building out my tool shed, buying everything that I thought I would need to go and DIY and keep the house maintained myself. And I broke everything that I touched. Not only was I not handy, but I learned pretty quickly that I wasn't really interested in going through the steps to figure out how to be handy. So I did the next best thing, which was started engaging with existing marketplaces, trying to find service providers to, because that to-do list still has to be tackled somehow. And I just found the process so overwhelming, and I was inundated by just too many options as a shopper. And, so I did what a lot of people end up doing. I just kind of let the list linger, deferred maintenance sitting on the shelf. And my wife at the time, she's still my wife, but at the time, my wife, excuse me, sorry, dear. At the time, the list still had to get done. And I noticed that projects started happening. Service providers, vendors started showing up to the house. And what I learned was my wife started siphoning off the to-do list to her dad, my father-in-law, who lived in the neighborhood. And his whole family is all property management, construction, development. So they have a really good awareness of the trades and how to keep up a home and residential and all of that. And things just started getting done. And, at first I felt like my masculinity, my ego, my adulthood was in jeopardy. But then I realized, wow, this should be productized. Like, this is actually an experience that people would pay for. It's this sort of productizing the home manager that, sort of fits with a lot of trends in consumer engagement, managed marketplaces. And a light bulb just went off that, hey, if I leave Expedia, because I was still there at the time, there are a lot of sort of parallels to a marketplace in travel to a marketplace in home services. But it just felt like the home services were several years behind where travel was. And it felt like this great opportunity to try something.
Oh, I love that story. I love that your product strategy brain went to let's productize this because it's a problem that exists. I really relate to the story. Similar. I bought a house a couple of years ago, but don't have a lot of local connections. And if it weren't for my realtor sending us like email after email of like, here's some plumbers I recommend, or here's an HVAC guy I've used before, like I would not have known where to begin. So I can definitely see.
And that's a pretty familiar refrain we hear when we talk about the origin story. Everyone, especially millennial first time home buyer, homeowners are like, yeah, I want that, or I need that, or that would be fantastic. Why aren't you in this town? Or why haven't you been here sooner? And it's funny because, and we've tried several iterations, which were all sort of influenced by where the country was during COVID, right? But our very first iteration was the height of COVID, and we were basically building something to give to realtors and agents to hand off to their homeowners because of what you just said. Realtors have this sort of, I'll say the word Rolodex, which will age me, but they have this this assortment of vendors that they use that they hand off, and there's massive value there. So the first thing we tried to do was just build a CRM tool for agents where they could more easily pass on this list of service providers, hoping that eventually we would add value to homeowners, not knowing where or how we would engage and what our like actual business model would be.
So yeah, take me through those early days. So you were still at Expedia. What was like, did you start kind of dabbling in Onder on the side, testing some things? Like walk me through so you kind of walked through one iteration, but when did this become David's full-time thing and how did you get there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I started with two good friends of mine. One was at Expedia with me, who's our current CTO, Greg Mushin, and the other, Dave Goldberg, longtime friend, who was at Capital One at the time and on the East Coast. And the three of us just started brainstorming on different solutions. The first sort of like business plan that we were just scribbling out at coffee shops, we affectionately called it Kurt, which is my father-in-law's name.
Oh, that's cool. He would have loved that.
The idea was like, yeah, everyone deserves to have a Kurt in their life that just takes care of stuff for them. And so, we started just brainstorming on what this might look like. Pre-COVID, it was very much like having almost like your landlord HOA administrator that shows up to everyone's home on a weekly basis. COVID happened, and all of a sudden, no one's ever going to let anyone in their house ever again. So it turned more into this digital playbook that we were going to try and, circulate through realtors when someone buys a house, starting with an inspection report, ingest the report, break it up into like specific sections and create more of a helpful to-do list. We were actually well into development on that version. And we had secured some outside funding to build a prototype for that. We were still all moonlighting at the time and just spending like weekends and evenings. We didn't do nearly enough at the time interviews with homeowners on this solution. We spent way more time building relationships with realtors and agents and brokerages. And we had built a couple of relationships around the country to pilot. And as soon as we got our first big at the time, friends and family pre-seed check, and we had an LOI to pilot. This was September of 2021. I went full time.
Is that when you started talking to more homeowners? Like when did the pivot happen to, and I think, yeah, if you can explain for the audience how Onder works today and the subscription model and how did you get to that pivot?
Yeah. So we tried to launch in the fall of 2021 with, a full iOS app built for realtors. And honestly, like we just hit a whole lot of development problems. We hit a lot of problems with the pilot participants that we were going to partner with. And we're like, oh no, we just left our jobs. We have money. Like this isn't working. What are we supposed to do? And And so we quickly synced up the three of us that were working on this at the time. And, we kind of let that original app keep developing and simmering and marinating. But we quickly started using some low code tools like Bubble and said, you know what, let's try and get straight to homeowners because we're having some friction trying to start with agents. So let's build something where homeowners can tell us what their problems are. So we built an asynchronous video app where homeowner from anywhere in the country could log in, ask any question they had via video, text, or photo, send it to us through our web app portal. And we started building a small roster on the supply side of inspectors, home inspectors, that's what they're called, as this sort of unbiased expert generalist that would answer questions, and we paid them on the side. And so we're like, all right, at the very least, while we're building out this operating manual, intensive, data-driven app, let's at least start collecting, data and getting real customer insight from homeowners. So we launched that, and we ran that for about 2 or 3 months, and decided after the first couple of weeks that this was way closer to a solution for an end user than what we had been building with this, sort of overweight, expensive app that we, sunk cost, just kind of put it on the shelf. First time founder mistake of overspending on an app before we had paying customers, et cetera. But, the video asynchronous messaging communication Q&A app, it had something. There was some signal there. We had about 200 to 300 users that signed up pretty quickly, asking questions. We were fielding answers, and we learned some really important things. One, people loved the personal response that they got to their question. And we had this broad range of questions from, is the crack in the wall foundational? Should I be worried about it? To what's the noise coming out of my toilet? To I'm thinking about this massive remodel. Who should I talk to first? This whole range of questions. And we learned, people were really happy. But, they say you have to be 10x better than an existing solution for something to gain real traction. We were probably 1.5, 2x better than a YouTube going in and searching yourself. But it wasn't we polled everyone that tried it and asked them a bunch of questions because we're all about customer research. We asked them, about your happiness and overall satisfaction. And that was always high, really high marks. Then we asked, how frequently would you use this? And that's where things started to get a little rocky. Well, I'll use it when I have questions. How often is that? I don't know. When things come up, I'll have a question. Oh, exactly. So there's already this sort of, misaligned incentive. And then the killer was, what would you pay for this, and how would you pay for it? Starting to get at some kind of pricing model, and the answer was very unpredictable. There wasn't a ton of confidence that we were distilling from that question. And so then we sort of took a step back and we said, well, what would you pay for? We've given this part of the solution, where would you see value? And nearly across the board, everyone's like, just get the thing done for me. I'm not going to do it myself. COVID was starting to ease up at that point. The sort of restrictions of having other people in your house was easing up. And I think at that point, we realized that, the big problem was not giving people more information and giving them confidence, but giving them confidence and trust that an agent would be there to sort of handle the end-to-end problem and get a solution. So really focusing on how do you provide solutions versus just facilitating the process.
I love it. Well, that's such a good practical example of how you iterated and pivoted to get to where you are today. So
yeah, so we polled our users, and they all said, well, we pay if you just gave us the solution. And so this is about a year ago in 2022 Q2. We said to a handful of those users that were all in Seattle and said, hey, we want to pilot a subscription model where will be your like house manager, your agent. You'll have a virtual agent. We'll build you a dashboard and a portal where you can make any requests you want. And you sort of trust us. We'll go build out a vendor network and we'll just get stuff done. And, I had 10 people that were in my network that said, great, how much? And we said, $60 a month should cover it. They said, great, we'll sign up. I think this will solve a big problem for us. And that, we're sort of off to the races from there.
Yeah. How did you figure out the pricing model? I know now you have 2 subscription tiers, I believe. Can you talk about how you decided to have those 2 and where you landed on with pricing?
Yeah, so we started at about $60 a month, and we started monthly because I'll just be like frank, I was anxious about like putting a $500 to $700 or $1,000 a year subscription out there without having like a tested product, so it felt safer to sort of dip our toes in the water that way. We also just priced out like the cost of service, the cost of time. Like we did a very like cost-based pricing analysis. We evaluated other options out in the market. What's the cost of labor and, kind of what is a reasonable rate for, sort of a very baseline get stuff done with a couple of baked in preventative care services baked into the subscription. So, that was our sort of first iteration. I think the 2 big adjustments we've made on our pricing model have been 3. One is we did introduce an annual plan versus monthly. And for anyone that manages subscriptions, the sort of, I guess, subscription business 101 is, you're really doing yourself a disservice if you don't have annual because of churn. And, for us, it was just also a matter of how long does it take for us to deliver really sticky, lasting value that gets someone hooked onto the product? Because if, you sign up for monthly and you aren't using it every month because you don't have house problems every month, you're sort of at risk of, well, this month I didn't use it. Let me look at the subscriptions I didn't use and let's cut those first. So we didn't want to fall prey to that. So annual has been a great adjustment for us. The second was we did lower that monthly cost to, I think it's $50 a month or $400 for the year, just to be a little bit more attractive, competitive, while, acknowledging that we're an early startup, we're going to get some things wrong, but we want to do what's right for the customer. And, fundamentally what we're building is this experience that transitions from transactional to customer lifetime value. And so, the subscription itself is not really where all of the money is made and all of the value is provided. So we were able to cut down the subscription costs a little bit. And then the third is we did add a second tier. So a lighter weight, lower cost tier for people that don't want the sort of hand-holding preventative care twice a year, like really proactive part of the subscription, but just want to get their training wheels, have the confidence knowing that they have a virtual manager available, like a home assistant. And that one is as low as, $8.50 a month, which is, just under $100 a year. And it's like a cup of coffee every month to know that you have like one person to reach out to, one refrigerator magnet for everything you need around the home.
Talk to me about how you partner with the service providers. Like, what's their relationship to Onder? Are they contractors with you? Are you just facilitating the connection between the homeowner and the service provider? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so we kind of have a hybrid model right now. So we actually do have field tech workers that do W-2. They do like some of the general maintenance work, and for us that's really about brand building and building trust with our members. That first time we do an onboarding, we're able to very quickly address those 3 to 5, 7 things that people have just been sort of sitting on, some drywall, some caulking, some small touch-up projects that we can then quickly just give immediate value to. But then our marketplace of vendors, our service partners, we have a managed marketplace. So it's not an open marketplace. Everyone can come in and bid. We do a lot of vetting and handholding to onboard partners. And, we try and manage it so that we're able to deliver, a decent percent of business per member on the supply side that we bring on board so that we're a meaningful partner for them and not just another sort of irritation that's sending useless lead gen every now and then. So we try to really be conscious and thoughtful about onboarding and vetting our service partners. We're trying and we're always sort of innovating here, but we're always kind of thinking about what are the carrots that will not just, we've obviously started by thinking very consciously about how to make the homeowner life easier. But now we're also thinking very consciously about, well, how do we also just make our vendor lives easier? Because, I think that if you dissect it in the home services space, no one's happy right now, right? Homeowners aren't happy. The service providers have a rough time talking and dealing with the homeowners. So, or with, the sort of expensive lead gen marketplaces that exist. So there's really an opportunity to just, make fundamental change for everyone in this space.
How are you finding contractors? Are you actively marketing to them for the supply side, or are you kind of manually picking and choosing?
Yeah, I mean, we're scraping the internet in different places looking for. I mean, our sweet spot are the SMB, like the small vendors that don't have like a massive marketing presence, so we can add a lot of value to them. Like right now, we're not partnering with big national brands. We're trying to build up local businesses. We do, have a conversation with them before we onboard them or during our onboarding. We tell them about our value prop. You get paid quickly because that's a pretty big value add in this field. Our jobs are real, our customers are vetted, the jobs are vetted. So it's like we're providing the same level of confidence and guarantee on both sides of the marketplace. And it's really important for us. We think about, talking to partners and their willingness to sell on our platform, not just the consumers and their willingness to buy. And, so we look for small partners that have good ratings already. They have to have some kind of reputation. So, all of those things are pretty readily available. And then, for us, it's about building relationships and over time, kind of rewarding our partners for volume, for CSAT, high CSAT with customers, and for being good partners. And that fundamentally keeps them coming back and giving and providing quality service to our members. And, hopefully keeps any kind of disintermediation down.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you brought up vetting. I mean, you are bringing people into someone else's home. So what kind of things are you implementing for that trust and safety aspect of the service?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, everyone that we bring on, fully licensed, fully bonded, fully insured. We do require that they send all of that information to us. We do run through and talk about their business with them before their first job. So we get to know who are the people that work for your company, who are your subs, and how do you compose your crew? And we've got fairly regular CSAT reporting with our homeowners so that, there's a pretty low, or I should say a really high threshold for staying on the platform on the service side. So there's not a lot of, as you can imagine, we're in the business of building trust, building access into the home, and there's a massive amount of value there. So we have to be pretty diligent about guarding the performance and quality. And, we'll absorb costs where we have to make sure that the homeowner is happy. But knock on wood, that hasn't happened a lot because we do spend the time upfront in our vetting process.
Are you getting feedback loops then from the customer as well after services happen?
Yeah, exactly. So we've developed those loops from the customers, and then we've also developed a newsletter for our service provider partners to keep them, excited and engaged and aware of all of the things, because we're obviously building out promotions and referral opportunities and ways for homeowners to like streamline the experience and keep them super happy. But we're also working on supply side promotions and new ways to make money, or highlighting the different carrots that we've set up to make the experience really smooth for them as well.
Could a homeowner like rebook the exact same service provider if they wanted to, so they have that familiarity?
Absolutely. I mean, it ends up working out really well with our field techs, because they get to know the customer, the homeowner, they get to know the house, the nooks and crannies. We think of ourselves also as like a data platform where we're ingesting all of this information around the home and building out some automation, some technology that will streamline the RFP process for getting, sort of streamlining the process for getting from homeowner has a problem all the way through getting someone in the house to fix it.
How are consumers finding you? I think I read an article from a few months ago and you were like, it's all word of mouth. And I was like, oh man, lucky guys. Is that still true? What are you doing to attract customers?
There are a couple of things. One, we do have still some word of mouth growth, which has been nice. We've started doing a little bit more paid programmatic, Google SEM spending, some things there. We do have a referral program for existing homes where we have something called an Onder credit, which is the equivalent of an hour's worth of like general maintenance work. And so if a member refers a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, et cetera, they earn an extra maintenance hour to get a project done for themselves. So it's kind of like, the Starbucks rewards points, where you create rewards to incentivize behavior, but keep everything on the platform. So for us, you earn Onder credits and you can apply them to get more work done around your home. And it's sort of this, reward yourself for helping us out and helping themselves out. We also do have partnerships. So we've started signing some partnerships with some, we have gone back to that original well of distribution through agents and brokerages. When someone buys a home, it's kind of whether you're the buy side agent or the sell side agent. If you're the selling agent, you get to market your house as coming with a home manager. Hey, so it's, I think that like depending on where you are in the sort of macro cycle, we're able to provide these sort of interesting marketing messages for agents. So if you're the sell side agent, you can market the house as, hey, this house comes with a home manager. And if you're the buy side agent, you can gift the subscription when they buy the house, like, hey, welcome to your new house. Here is this subscription that I paid for, or I paid for some Onder credits to move in, to make the move-in process really smooth. So we've started signing some good partnerships there. We're starting to see some growth come through that channel. And we also pick up, honestly, some growth hacky type stuff. We pick up some one-off jobs from other sites, and we do a one-off job. Yeah, I mean, this helps us fill our capacity, but we also use it as like a marketing tool where we come in, we do one job, and then we upsell that subscriber, that person into a subscription. That has worked nicely as well. And yeah, I mean, we have this sort of, there's the combination grassroots, partnerships, and digital. So early days though.
Yeah, no, but I saw the gift subscription on your website, and I thought that was so smart. If you think about, newly married couples, like being able to register for an Onder subscription, or their parents wanting to give them a, home buying gift. And it's like, here you go. Like, that's a lot more useful than new towels.
I love the newlywed example. The one that I'm like kind of excited about that I've seen a bunch of lately on our people signing up are new parents. So we actually have a handful at this point of new families that signed up that, they were pregnant before when they signed up, and, they're like, we're trying to get the house ready for the baby. Can you do all of this stuff? We don't have time. We're not going to do it ourselves. And we're like, yes, happy to help. And for those families, we give a nice little baby Onder gift as well. And, it's really all about like helping this generation of homeowners that, did not grow up handy, and quite frankly, value time over, anything else, and are willing to pay for this sort of agent assisted life experience because, I think I read somewhere that millennials are now the fastest growing cohort of home buyers. They are also have a ridiculously high rate of buyer's regret, buyer's remorse when they buy a house. I think it was something ridiculous, like 2/3 of millennial home buyers have buyer's regret. And one of the biggest reasons is just not budgeting for and not being aware of all of the maintenance costs and things that break and all of that, like the hidden costs of owning a home. And then the third thing is, for what it's worth, millennials are, I read this somewhere, the largest generation of dual income households, which means there's not a lot of free time to go around, which is why, people are willing to spend ridiculous premiums with DoorDash or food delivery, grocery delivery services, instead of, what you would typically do, which is have someone go grocery shop and prepare dinner and all this other stuff. People are paying massive amounts of these premiums for convenience because time is really limited.
No, it makes a ton of sense. I think there's also a really large percentage of single household owners, which a lot of home projects are really hard to do if you're by yourself. So having your service would make that a lot easier as well.
There's some really, really great opportunities to segment our messaging. I also think about this sort of, right now we think about millennials and all of this stuff that I talked about, which makes them a great like target first beachhead audience. But I also think about millennials' parents who are, looking to hold on to their autonomy, to stay in their homes. They aren't looking to move into the assisted living facility, that next step. And can we provide for them that sort of confidence that, hey, someone is coming in and checking on your parents once a quarter or twice a year, making sure that the house is not staying together by duct tape. So I just think that, the extensibility of, people looking for this life assistance, this life aid extends well beyond just this sort of like, millennial, I don't care and I don't know first time buyer across like, there's just so many people that want that time back in their lives.
I think you're just around Seattle right now. How are you thinking about like expanding into other geographic markets? Are there certain signals you're looking for? Can you talk a little bit about that?
For starters, we view Seattle as a great first launch market. I mean, in some ways, it's a bit of a competitive advantage for us because, sort of checks all the boxes on target that we would want to hit early days. Millennial, home buyers, nice houses, tech workers, disposable income with no time. We kind of, when we think about expansion, one, we know that we have a tremendous amount of runway and growth here in our first market. Also, if you think about it, what we're building, there's just economies of scale and benefit to have like rich density because, we effectively act as this virtual distributed HOA on behalf of all of our members. And so we can, have a whole lot more pricing power, the more density that we have with our community and our member base. So all of these things come into consideration when we think about, how fast do we need to scale out and grow into new markets and test them out. When we do think about, and we do have our list of second markets, one, we have a wait list that we have on our site. So if there's anyone that is interested in Onder and you're not in Seattle, you can come to our website. You can put your name on our mailing newsletter. We're collecting. Once we hit a certain threshold, that's where, it'll sort of trigger like, all right, are we ready to put that sort of lowest denomination of boots on the ground to kick off and repeat the playbook? But, we feel pretty confident that when we get to that point, we'll be ready to hit the ground running, and we're getting pretty close to thinking about that.
That's cool. Yeah, you have a playbook that you can replicate in the right market.
Yeah, we hope so. And there's a handful of markets that have this look and feel. Now, the other part of this is our investment on the technology side, because we are very much investing in automation tools and scalable tools that will allow us to be a whole lot quicker when we do go to that second and third market. Because we're our intention is not just building like a local neighborhood handy person business, which is a really nice business. That's just we're thinking about how do you leverage the tech tools that are available today to build this agent experience for the masses, because that's what makes it affordable.
We haven't talked about what kind of like full-time team you have working on this. Are you heavier on the product side right now? Can you speak to that? How you think about the team makeup?
Yeah. So we started by focusing heavily on the operations side and just delivering like quality service. It's funny, you can overinvest on the tech, but if you can't get distribution and you can't get customers to use even the most basic of service, then you don't really have much. And so for us, it was very much about demonstrating that we can get the ops working. I think of it as like this three-legged stool, right? You have the sort of service delivery and operations side, which, in the early days, most of our communications are email, text, SMS, phone calls. And so you don't need a fancy app for that. You don't need a fancy engagement. So we have a web app right now. And just by doing that and by focusing on the basics of building out the supply side of our marketplace, focusing on trust and access and just delivering quality service, we have our average homeowner spend somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000 per annual through our platform, which is tip of the iceberg for us. The second is growth and making sure that through partnership or through grassroots marketing or other channels, we can continue to grow. And then the third is technology and automation and, really a hyper focus on unit economics and making sure that what we're building enables us to be scalable, because, we're doing a ton of unscalable things at the moment to prove out the first two, which you do. So the team is pretty small still. We've got 6 full-time, myself, Greg, who's our CTO, Shara, who's our head of operations, and then the operations team that's managing the portfolio of homes and helping with growth.
You talked about some KPIs in that answer a little bit about like how much users are spending on your platform. What other KPIs are you tracking right now to kind of assess whether you're onto something?
Yeah, so we're obviously tracking things like retention and churn and growth. Luckily our retention and churn is really high, churn is really low. I think I like to give credit to switching over our pricing to an annual subscription to help. But we fundamentally didn't have a churn problem before that. It was just anxiety on my side of having a monthly subscription, which I think, in those early days, every member you just want to like hold on to with kid gloves, and, just everything is super tenuous in the early days. Other metrics. Yeah. So, obviously we focus on growth. We focus on homeowner, not just the spend, but the volume of projects and requests that we're able to facilitate for those homeowners. And then on the operations side, we're actively tracking the time it takes us to go from a request all the way through to a service is delivered. Because as you can imagine, that's where we can really separate ourselves, or that's how we think of being able to separate ourselves on both sides of the marketplace and where we can introduce automation to become a ton more efficient. And that's also where we think about extensibility. So if we are able to drive down the time from 10 hours, which is, I'm just throwing a number out there, 10 hours from a request through all of the sort of duck legs under the water work that our ops team has to go through to get bids, and then do the scheduling and get someone into the house. If we can get that down to a matter of minutes or even less, well, then we really have something that will work not just for us and for our growth, but then we have a scalable platform that we can sort of stitch on other companies onto the platform. And, the model grows from there, from just purely B2C to something that is a whole lot richer and more valuable.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I think that's solving the biggest pain point, right, of booking a home service. When your HVAC goes out, your air conditioner, height of summer, you don't want to have to call 10 places to find the one that can come out in 3 days, not 3 weeks. So if you can solve, I mean, I've gone through that exact issue before. So if you can solve that for people, everyone would sign up. I always like to end on, kind of, can you give us a sneak peek on what's next for Onder? Anything bubbling you'd like to share with the audience?
One, we're excited about our growth. We're excited about some of the partnerships that hopefully we'll be able to announce pretty soon, that will help us get our distribution going, but also get us just fundamentally into the hands of way more homes. And then two, I'll put a plug in for what we're building on the technology side. We are focused on how do we make as much automation as possible, and what does it look like for everyone to have a virtual home manager that is able to sort of build and take the best from the best minds in home services and put it at the hands of every homeowner and give everyone access to that kind of service and capability. I mean, we have a lot of exciting things coming down the pike. So, we're looking forward to growth and to continuing to expand our presence.
Awesome. And if people want to learn more about Onder or from you, David, how would they find you?
You can come to our website, which is getonder.com, or you can shoot me a note, hello@getonder, and I take a look at all of those. And if you send a message and you CC or you tag me and say, David, I got a question, I'll be sure to answer all of those.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for being here today, David. I really appreciate it. It's a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Dana.
This podcast was brought to you by Every. We work with gig companies, marketplaces, delivery businesses, and more to pay their workers fast. You can learn more at every.com.